what the universe does to rare souls before sending them the right person. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. Sometimes, the universe doesn't just delay your love story, it reshapes you in the waiting. If you've ever felt like your heart was on pause, like you're evolving alone while the world rushes by, know this: rare souls are refined in solitude, not forgotten. Every delay, every heartbreak, every silence has been a sacred preparation. This video is for those who sense that something greater is unfolding behind the scenes, because it is. Before the universe sends you the right person, it sends you back to yourself. Are you ready to explore what's really happening in the in-between? Comment below. I trust divine timing if this speaks to your soul. Let's awaken together. Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom. 1. Solitude is preparation, not punishment. Rare souls feel unseen in love, not because they are lacking, but because they carry within them a refusal to settle for what is shallow and fleeting. And this resistance is both their challenge and their gift. The universe understands the depth of their longing and the clarity of their vision, so it does not hand them quick companionship or superficial bonds to ease their temporary loneliness. Instead, it gives them solitude, which feels at times like silence, distance, and waiting, but is in truth the highest form of preparation. This solitude is not punishment, it is refinement, a necessary filter that strips away illusions, heals the wounds of old patterns, and teaches the soul to distinguish between conditioned desires and its truest longings. In the language of spirituality, solitude is the furnace where the raw metal of the self is transformed into something enduring, something that can hold love without breaking. In the path of spiritual awakening, this stage cannot be avoided, for only through it does the soul learn the sacred difference between being alone and being lonely. During this season, the rare soul begins to see clearly that modern culture often mistakes attachment for love, validation for intimacy, and convenience for destiny. Social media floods us with images of couples and commitments, tempting us to measure our worth against timelines that were never meant for us. Yet this solitude is the universe's protection, ensuring that we do not enter partnerships that mirror our wounds instead of healing them. Carl Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Solitude is the mirror that makes the unconscious visible. It forces you to confront the shadows you once avoided, to sit with the ache of your unmet needs, and to grow strong enough to no longer seek completion outside yourself. It is a sacred silence in which you learn that being whole is not about another person filling your emptiness, but about discovering your fullness within. This refinement is not gentle. It can feel like fire. You may wonder why love seems to come easily for others while you remain waiting. But the truth is that your path requires greater patience because your love will carry greater depth. Diamonds form under pressure, pearls are born from irritation, and strong souls are forged in solitude. Without this process, many confuse temporary chemistry with lasting connection, repeating cycles of heartbreak because they never pause long enough to awaken. For the rare soul, solitude interrupts this cycle. It teaches you to recognize red flags without ignoring them, to value emotional resonance over external appearances, and to trust your intuition as the true compass. In this way, solitude becomes your teacher, guiding you toward a love that transcends mere compatibility and awakens something eternal. In modern life, this preparation can feel unbearable, but it is the very soil in which your destiny is planted. Each moment of solitude is a seed sown in silence that will bloom in divine timing. You are learning to hold conversations with your inner world, to align with your highest values, to heal generational wounds, and to establish boundaries that protect your spirit. This is the unseen work that prepares you not only to receive the right person, but also to keep them. Love without preparation is fragile, but love born out of solitude is rooted, stable, and radiant. Jung's wisdom reminds us that a relationship is not simply two people meeting. It is two souls carrying their inner worlds to each other. And for rare souls, that inner world must first be cultivated through solitude. So solitude becomes your silent ally. It whispers to you in the stillness that you are not behind, that divine timing cannot be rushed, that every moment spent in self-discovery is shaping you into the kind of partner who can love without fear and be loved without losing yourself. It is not a waiting room where nothing happens, but a sacred chamber where everything essential is unfolding. The universe, in its mysterious design, delays what you desire so that you may grow into who you were always meant to be. And when the right person arrives, they will not only meet you, but also recognize the rare soul you have become, refined by solitude, awakened by silence, and ready for a love that reflects the truth of your being. Have you ever experienced a season of solitude that felt like preparation rather than punishment? If so, share your story in the comments below so we can inspire one another. And if not, simply comment, "I will embrace solitude," to show your openness to this powerful journey. 2. The first test, radical solitude. This imposed solitude is not simply an empty stretch of time. It is a sacred initiation that forces rare souls to separate the shallow ache of loneliness from the deeper wisdom of self-connection. At first, it feels like abandonment, as if the universe has withdrawn love and left you suspended in silence. But in truth, it is teaching you to recognize your own energetic frequency and to stop shrinking yourself in order to fit into relationships that cannot hold your depth. Carl Jung said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." And this test of solitude makes that statement real. It strips away the illusion that companionship alone can fill the void, showing instead that the only true remedy for emptiness is learning to inhabit your own presence with reverence and strength. When you are kept apart from lesser connections, you begin to see clearly how often you once settled for less than your worth. Solitude reveals the quiet places where you compromised your values, where you ignored your intuition, where you traded authenticity for temporary comfort. It challenges you to end this cycle by teaching you that love is not about escaping yourself, but about returning to yourself. Spiritual awakening begins here, in the silence of radical solitude, where you realize that being alone is not the same as being lonely. It is in this stillness that you tune into your unique vibration, a frequency that is rare and unrepeatable. And it is only by recognizing and protecting this vibration that you will ever be prepared to welcome the right person without losing yourself again. Carl Jung also reminded us, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And this privilege unfolds most powerfully in solitude. Like an instrument being tuned, your soul requires stillness to find harmony. Without this tuning, relationships become discordant, repeating old patterns of chaos and disconnection. But when you endure solitude with patience and intention, you refine your frequency so that when the right soul finally enters, the connection is not ordinary, but transcendent, resonating with the intelligent spiritual wisdom of the universe itself. Modern life resists this lesson, distracting you with constant noise, shallow attention, and temporary bonds, making solitude feel unbearable. Yet what feels unbearable is actually the birthplace of your highest strength. It is in this space that you confront your thoughts, your fears, your shadows, and your desires. You meet the parts of yourself you once ignored, and you discover what must be healed before love can truly flourish. Solitude becomes the teacher that shows you how to trust yourself, how to nurture your creativity, how to develop clarity of mind, and how to awaken your inner intelligence so you are no longer dependent on another's presence for wholeness. This is the alchemy of solitude, transforming emptiness into richness, silence into wisdom, and waiting into preparation. When you embrace it, you no longer see it as a void, but as the soil in which your spirit grows, roots deep enough to withstand the storms of love and life. The universe does not give this test to everyone, only to rare souls who carry within them a destiny that demands purity, strength, and unwavering authenticity. If you are in such a season now, know that you are not being punished, but prepared. Every moment spent in solitude is shaping you into a vessel capable of holding a love that matches your depth. You are learning to carry your own light so powerfully that when the right person arrives, they do not complete you, but join you, resonating with your frequency because you have already learned to stand fully in it. In this way, solitude ceases to be exile and becomes initiation, the first great step of the universe in guiding rare souls toward a love that transcends the ordinary and awakens the extraordinary. 3. The second test, the false twin flame. The second test the universe places before rare souls is the arrival of the false twin flame. Someone who feels almost destined, profoundly familiar, and cosmically aligned. Yet in truth, they are not the true partner, but a reflection of the unconscious. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And this encounter proves the wisdom of his words. What you meet in the false twin flame is not genuine intimacy, but the mirror of your deepest projections, your longings, wounds, and unhealed shadows cast onto another person who seems to embody all that you desire. The connection feels magnetic because it is your own energy echoing back, disguised in human form, and in this reflection, the universe is asking you to see yourself more clearly. The challenge is to recognize the difference between real love and projection, between a bond that embraces your whole being and one that only accepts fragments of you. In the journey of spirituality and spiritual development, this moment is crucial, for it demands discernment and courage. A false twin flame might awaken intense emotions and feel like destiny, but beneath the passion lies incompleteness. They cannot hold all of you, only the parts that align with your unconscious needs or their own limitations. The universe uses this test not to punish you, but to train your soul to refuse half-formed love. For rare souls are not meant to settle for connections that only see them halfway. Through this test, you are refined, much like marble in the hands of a sculptor, chipped away until your truest essence can emerge. By facing the mirror of projection, you uncover your hidden patterns, your deepest vulnerabilities, and your unseen desires. The universe sharpens your inner vision so that when the right person appears, you will not confuse projection for presence. Jung observed that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. The false twin flame may ignite sparks, but it is the true partner who brings transformation rooted in truth rather than illusion. If you find yourself in a connection that feels irresistible yet unstable, ask yourself whether this love invites wholeness or traps you in repetition. True love will never demand you to shrink, suppress, or divide yourself. It will not only mirror your light, but also embrace your shadows with compassion. The second test calls you to release the illusion of incomplete love, to resist the pull of projection, and to trust that something deeper awaits. When you refuse to settle, you show the universe that you are prepared for the one who can stand beside you in truth. The lesson is profound. Discernment is the guardian of love. The universe tests rare souls more severely because they are destined for deeper unions, and only those who pass through the fire of projection can carry the strength to receive love in its fullness. The false twin flame is not your ending, but your preparation, teaching you to separate infatuation from intimacy, shadow from substance, illusion from reality. When you endure this trial with patience, clarity, and integrity, you prove yourself ready for the true partner who will not complete you, but who will join you in a union where both souls are already whole. If you've ever faced the test of a false twin flame, share your experience in the comments so others can learn from your journey. And if you're ready to welcome the right connection, comment below. I trust the universe's timing. 4. The third test, self-sabotage when love arrives. When love begins to enter the life of a rare soul, it does not come wrapped in ease, but often in resistance. For Carl Jung reminded us that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. These unconscious wounds surface as walls the moment true love appears. Rare souls, shaped by betrayal and disappointment, instinctively doubt, push away, or test the very person they have long prayed for, sabotaging the blessing before it can take root. Suffering has become so familiar that joy feels dangerous, and intimacy feels like a risk too heavy to trust. What looks like discernment is often fear, cloaked as wisdom. What seems like strength is sometimes only a defense against being vulnerable. This pattern of self-sabotage is not foolishness, but a reflection of the deep battle between longing and fear. On one side is the yearning for profound, authentic love. On the other is the terror of being broken again. In today's world, this shows up in ways that feel almost ordinary. Doubting the kindness of someone who genuinely cares, ghosting someone you secretly like just to see if they chase, setting impossibly high standards not because they matter, but because you fear being truly seen. These actions create distance, all while pretending to be noble caution. Yet this is the third test the universe places before rare souls. Can you allow yourself to receive healthy love? Or will you cling to your patterns until they drive away the very thing you desire? Spiritual awakening is not only about meditation, rituals, or sacred knowledge. It is about the courage to soften when every instinct wants to harden, to lean into trust when every wound whispers retreat. Jung taught that where wisdom reigns, there is no conflict between thinking and feeling, reminding us that true wisdom is the balance, the alignment of mind and heart that welcomes love with clarity rather than suspicion. To meet love with constant testing is to keep replaying old pain, but to meet love with openness is to step into transformation. The universe uses this phase to refine rare souls, not to punish them, but to stretch them beyond their fear of intimacy. Every time you push away someone who mirrors health and kindness, you are shown how much you still cling to the safety of suffering. Every time you sabotage connection out of mistrust, you are reminded that discernment without trust becomes a prison. But the universe does not send the right person to watch you destroy love with your past. It offers this test so you can recognize fear in disguise, rise above old defenses, and finally allow yourself to be loved without sabotage. The path forward is learning to notice your patterns with honesty and tenderness. When you catch yourself doubting every word, ask if it is wisdom or fear speaking. When you are tempted to test, ask if it is the truth or doubt you are seeking. To receive love is to admit that not every story ends in pain, that joy can be trusted, and that intimacy can be safe. This is the spiritual growth that turns awakening into wholeness. Passing this test means understanding that love is not a trap, but a liberation, and that the right person is not here to harm you, but to walk with you in strength, in wisdom, and in freedom. 5. The fourth test, vibrational recalibration. The fourth test the universe gives to rare souls before sending them the right person is vibrational recalibration, a complete reorientation of energy that strips away outdated identities, roles, and environments that no longer match the frequency of the life and love you are destined for. At certain points in your journey, people you once resonated with begin to fall away. Friendships that felt safe suddenly feel suffocating, and even the stories you once told yourself about who you are start to collapse. This is not cruelty, but preparation, because Carl Jung reminded us through his idea of individuation that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. To individuate is to shed illusions, even those that secretly inflate the ego, such as believing that being misunderstood makes you more worthy. The universe does not allow illusions to cross into a sacred union, because only authenticity can sustain love built on truth. Vibrational recalibration demands that you let go of identities that once gave comfort but now block your expansion. Think of it as a software upgrade. The old code may have worked for a while, but it cannot run the new programs your soul is ready for. Many resist because the release of roles like the victim or the misunderstood one feels like death. But in reality, it is renewal. It is the pruning of dead branches so new growth can flourish. Søren Kierkegaard once said, "Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards." And this process is exactly that. Only by surrendering the past can you step into the future your soul longs for. Jung's spiritual wisdom shows us that individuation is radical honesty, requiring you to face the stories you repeat to yourself. I am unseen. I am always the victim. I am different, therefore special. These narratives may once have protected you, but they also kept you cycling in pain. Spiritual intelligence lies in realizing that clinging to suffering does not make you valuable. True worth is born when you embody authenticity without the need for victimhood. In modern life, this looks like walking away from environments that drain you, refusing to stay in relationships that demand you betray yourself, and no longer needing to broadcast wounds for validation because you understand that healing is a private, sacred act. This recalibration opens the space to attract love that resonates with your true frequency. Energy always seeks resonance, and if you continue holding on to old wounds, you will draw partners who mirror them back. But when you release outdated narratives, you magnetize someone who recognizes your wholeness instead of your brokenness. This is why the universe seems to delay love for rare souls. It is not denial, but refinement, ensuring that when love arrives, it is no longer another painful lesson, but a true meeting of equals. Through this process, you learn to stop mistaking intensity for intimacy, to stop equating chaos with depth, and to embrace the quiet constancy of love that is both deep and steady. The emptiness you feel during this stage is not punishment, but clearing, making space for alignment. The fading friendships, dissolving identities, and louder silences are all proof that the universe is preparing you. Jung warned, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Vibrational recalibration is the way fate becomes conscious choice, and choice becomes sacred love. The right person will not come to rescue an outdated version of you. They will arrive to meet the soul who had the courage to become fully authentic, and only then will you realize why this test was necessary. Leave a like and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss powerful insights like this. Type in the comments, "I am aligned with my highest vibration," to affirm your readiness for true love and spiritual growth. 6. The final test. Surrender the need for love. The universe's final test is not punishment, but transformation. And it asks you to stop chasing love as if it were something missing, and instead to embody it as who you are. For rare souls who have walked the difficult road of self-discovery and spiritual awakening, this step is about becoming whole without external validation. Carl Jung reminds us, your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. In this awakening, you realize that love is not something to be found, but something to be lived. And when you begin to live as love itself, you no longer seek a partner to complete you. You radiate a presence that calls forth what truly matches your soul. This is not indifference or apathy. It is alignment. To detach from the hunger for love is not to shut yourself off, but to rise above the old patterns that once chained you. Spiritual development means standing in the fullness of your being, already whole, already loved, already chosen by the very source of life. The frequency you carry becomes your prayer, and the universe responds by bringing a mirror, not to your wounds, but to your strength. This is vibrational congruence, the profound truth that once you no longer need love, the right love arrives. It is not a love born of lack or fear, but of recognition, a connection between two souls who walk side by side, whole to whole, reflecting one another's growth and depth. As you reach this place, something powerful begins to unfold. The people who once drained your energy quietly fall away, and the karmic bonds that once entangled you dissolve. In their place appears someone who does not come to fix your brokenness, but to honor your completeness. Someone who resonates with the love you already carry. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And who you truly are is not a seeker waiting to be found, but the living embodiment of love itself. To surrender the need for love is to embrace the highest state of spirituality, where your very being is love, where your wholeness is no longer negotiable. The lesson the universe weaves through this final test is simple yet profound. Release the timeline, release the attachment, release the idea that love exists outside of you. Love was never withheld. It was always being cultivated within you, so that when it finally arrives in human form, it is not a savior you meet, but an equal. The test is not to prove yourself worthy of love, but to remember that you were never incomplete. By surrendering the need for love, you step into the truth that you are in love. And from that truth, the universe sends you someone who doesn't fill your emptiness, but amplifies your fullness. This is the sacred paradox reserved for rare souls. Only by letting go of the need do you finally receive the love that was always meant for you. 7. The arrival of soul-level partnership. Once all the tests of solitude, longing, and inner refinement are passed, true partnership arrives not with chaos, but with calm recognition, like two long-lost travelers meeting on the same path. Carl Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." And this is exactly what happens when the universe finally sends the right person to a rare soul. This love is not an obsession, nor is it about sacrificing your identity for the sake of union. Instead, it is peace wrapped in presence, freedom built on trust, and authenticity born from maturity. It is the kind of connection where both individuals can stand tall as whole beings, yet grow even more expansive together, celebrating each other's essence without fear of losing themselves. This partnership is marked not by drama, but by serenity. In a society that often mistakes turbulence for passion, rare souls discover that the deepest intensity comes through calm steadiness, through the quiet power of being seen, known, and accepted without conditions. Spirituality teaches us that when two awakened beings meet, there is no need for control, manipulation, or endless games. Instead, love becomes a sanctuary, a sacred space where both can rest, create, and thrive. Spiritual awakening prepares you for this by stripping away illusions of desperate attachment and showing you that authentic love exists where freedom and devotion walk hand in hand. In daily life, this reveals itself through respect for each other's individuality, the courage to grow side by side, and the ability to disagree without destruction. Psychological maturity lies at the heart of such a relationship. Jung's idea of individuation, the process of becoming whole within oneself, becomes the foundation of a bond that is neither dependent nor fragile. Two people who have faced their shadows and embraced their light no longer project unhealed wounds onto one another. Instead, they act as mirrors reflecting back strength, wisdom, and truth. Think of it like two instruments tuned in harmony, creating a melody that is powerful not because it is loud, but because it resonates with clarity. In modern terms, this looks like partners who support each other's dreams without envy, communicate openly without fear, and hold space for each other's transformation without judgment. True freedom in love is not the absence of commitment, but the presence of trust. It is knowing you do not need to hold tightly to prevent loss, because love rooted in authenticity cannot be stolen or diminished. Just as a bird sings most beautifully when free, love flourishes when both partners feel unchained and supported in their highest expression. This balance between closeness and individuality, presence and space, is what gives the relationship its strength and grace. And through this balance, both discover that love is not about filling emptiness, but about expanding abundance. The universe delivers this kind of connection only after it has refined a rare soul to embody truth, strength, and clarity. What emerges is not a fantasy, but a sacred partnership that uplifts, liberates, and transforms. It is expansion instead of limitation, truth instead of illusion, and wholeness instead of dependency. You are not meant to disappear into love, but to uncover deeper layers of yourself through it. The universe teaches you that peace is passion, freedom is devotion, and growth is the truest expression of love. This is the essence of a soul-level partnership, not a prize for waiting, but the natural result of becoming whole and awakened within yourself, so that when the right person arrives, you can meet them not as half, but as complete. And remember, the universe doesn't rush a rare soul. It prepares them in silence, refines them through solitude, and only sends them the right person when they've become whole within. If this message spoke to your spirit today, let it sink in that your timing is divine and your energy is sacred. You're not behind, you're being aligned. If you found value in this video, please share it with someone who needs this reminder, and don't forget to subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Tap the notification bell so you never miss another moment of clarity, insight, and soul truth. Your journey is sacred, and we're honored to walk it with you. Carl Jung said your first 40 years were a lie. As Carl Jung once said, we cannot live the afternoon of life according to the program of life's morning. What if everything you built in the first 40 years, your career, relationships, identity, was shaped more by survival than by self-awareness? On Spiritual Wisdom, we invite you to pause and reflect. Have you been climbing a mountain only to realize it wasn't yours to climb? In this video, we'll uncover the deeper truth behind Jung's bold insight and help you understand how this moment could be the beginning of your real life. Comment below. I'm ready to live my truth if you feel this awakening stirring within you. 1. The first 40 years are the mask, not the self. The first half of life, as Carl Jung profoundly observed, is not truly lived, it is performed. You don't begin by discovering who you are, but by adapting to who the world tells you to be. You learn to wear a mask, not out of deception, but out of necessity. This persona becomes your armor, your access pass, your survival tool. It helps you navigate the terrain of family expectations, societal standards, and cultural definitions of worth. You pursue what you were told matters: achievements, validation, control, acceptance. But underneath all that effort is a quiet forgetting, a quiet abandonment of your essence. And for a time, this works. You build a life, a name, a version of success. But deep inside, something ancient and honest stirs, waiting. That stir becomes a storm somewhere around midlife. The outer world may still applaud you, but your inner world begins to whisper a rebellion. The mask feels tight. The roles feel empty. The life you've built begins to feel like a story written by someone else. It's not depression. It's not dysfunction. It's the threshold of awakening. This moment is often misunderstood in modern life. We label it a crisis, midlife, spiritual, existential. But in truth, it's the soul demanding to be heard after decades of being silenced by performance. You begin to question everything, not out of despair, but out of clarity. Why am I here? Who am I beneath the labels, the career, the habits? The answers don't come easily because they were never taught they must be remembered. Spirituality steps in where psychology stops. What once felt like success now feels like seduction. What once seemed like the truth now feels like programming. The breakdown is really a breakaway from the old self, the inherited identity, the unconscious patterns. You realize that the first 40 years of your life were a sacred setup, not a mistake, but a preparation. The universe allowed you to play the role so that one day you'd be ready to step behind the curtain. As this inner transformation unfolds, you start valuing alignment over ambition. Silence becomes sacred. Simplicity becomes satisfying. You begin to honor your energy, your intuition, your authentic desires. This is the journey of individuation, the sacred path Jung described, where the soul reclaims itself. But it requires a spiritual awakening and a willingness to walk away from who you've been in order to become who you truly are. And the world won't always understand. People may resist your change because your liberation confronts their own illusions. But you're not here to wear a mask for their comfort. You're here to embody your truth. The first half of life builds the shell. The second half fills it with soul. The moment you stop living to be seen and start living to be real, everything shifts. Not instantly, not without grief, but with unshakable clarity. The lie was never your fault, but the truth is now your responsibility. Comment below, I am ready to take off the mask. If you're prepared to rediscover who you truly are beneath the roles you've played. 2. Midlife crisis is not a breakdown. It's a breakthrough. Around the age of 40, something begins to stir beneath the surface of your carefully constructed life. What once brought a sense of purpose now feels hollow. The career you've built, the relationships you've nurtured, the goals you've chased, they suddenly seem like roles in a script you never wrote. There's a deep ache, a quiet discontent that refuses to be silenced. And despite your best efforts to carry on, you begin to feel as if something within you is dying. But this isn't a failure or collapse, it's a sacred rupture. Carl Jung called this moment the beginning of individuation, the spiritual and psychological process of becoming whole. The structures of the ego, those strategies you relied on for validation, security, and identity, begin to dissolve, not because they were wrong, but because they were never meant to carry you into the second half of life. What you're feeling is not a breakdown, it's a breakthrough. The soul no longer wants to be managed or controlled by the ego's ambitions. Instead, it longs to be remembered. You're not meant to live the second half of your life with the same patterns that carried you through the first. The first 40 years are often spent climbing the mountain that society builds for you: achievement, image, perfection, performance. But when you reach the summit, you realize that the view doesn't satisfy your inner hunger. It's as if your life has been a performance and the curtain is finally falling. The applause dies down, and in the silence, you begin to hear your true voice for the first time. That voice is asking questions no success can answer. Who am I beneath all of this? What do I really want? What is asking to be born in me? This is the moment when spirituality becomes more than a concept. It becomes your compass. It's not about running away from your life. It's about turning toward it with new eyes. You start to see that the chaos is not destruction, it's recalibration. The discomfort is not disorder, it's divine disruption. Jung taught that when we ignore the voice of the unconscious, it erupts in midlife through anxiety, dissatisfaction, or depression. But when we listen, when we dare to enter the unknown, we are led into a deeper truth, a version of life that isn't about fitting in, but about aligning with who we really are. The intelligence you begin to embody is no longer intellectual. It's spiritual intelligence. It's the wisdom that comes not from knowing more, but from remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. The soul does not want you to keep striving. It wants you to wake up. And when you do, everything begins to change. You stop chasing and you start attracting. You stop proving and you start expressing. You begin to let go of the false self and embrace your true self, not the self built on roles and responsibilities, but the one rooted in depth, stillness, presence, and power. What looks like a crisis to the outside world is actually a spiritual initiation. It's the threshold between performance and presence, between ego and essence, between doing and being. You are not falling apart. You are falling inward. And in that fall, you will find yourself. Are you ready to turn your so-called crisis into a conscious breakthrough? If so, comment below. I will meditate to affirm your commitment to this transformative midlife awakening. 3. Society fears the second half because it's too real. Modern culture worships youth like a religion, idolizing fast success, beauty, and social proof, while quietly dreading the passage into midlife, branding it a crisis or decline. But Carl Jung taught us something radically different. The second half of life isn't a breakdown, it's a breakthrough. It's not when your light dims, but when your inner fire begins to burn with truth. In your early years, you build an identity based on what the world rewards: titles, roles, approval. But eventually, something deeper begins to stir. What once felt fulfilling now feels forced. The laughter you perform for others starts to sound hollow. Your achievements pile up, yet your soul feels untouched. This is not failure. It's a sacred invitation, a whisper from within, telling you that real meaning isn't found in what you've gained, but in what you're ready to let go of. The second half of life demands that you become all that was never really you. The career you chose to please your parents, the relationship you stayed in out of fear, the mask you wore to be loved. Now, everything false begins to crack under the weight of your authenticity. It's painful, yes, but necessary. Jung believed that true spiritual development begins not with self-improvement, but with self-recovery. And that recovery requires the courage to descend inward, to question, to unravel, to feel. You stop asking, "What do they think of me?" and start asking, what do I know to be true about myself? You begin to see that growth isn't always about becoming more. Sometimes it's about becoming less performative, less reactive, less attached to external validation. There's a grief in this process, the grief of waking up and realizing you've lived decades by someone else's script. But grief is sacred. It clears the fog. And in that clearing, you begin to see that the second half isn't about chasing another goal. It's about coming home to yourself. You reclaim your voice. You protect your peace. You realize that spirituality isn't something you do on Sundays. It's how you breathe, how you choose, how you love with presence instead of performance. You stop needing to be understood and start needing to be whole. And from this place, everything shifts. You no longer fear being alone because solitude becomes your sanctuary. You stop fearing the mirror because now it reflects someone real. You stop fearing time because now you walk in alignment, not urgency. So while the world may call this your decline, you begin to see it as your return. The return to who you were before the world told you who to be. The return to your soul's knowing. This is the gift hidden in the so-called midlife crisis. Not a crisis at all, but the birth of your truest self. In this chapter, you don't need to become anything. You only need to remember. Because the path forward is not about adding more to your life, but finally removing what was never yours to carry. And in that space, truth rises. This is where spiritual wisdom lives not in perfection, but in presence. Not in performance, but in peace. If this message stirred something deep within you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's dive into secret number 4 together and keep uncovering the truths society doesn't want us to face. 4. The soul awakens through inner disruption. The soul does not shout, it stirs. It stirs through the quiet ache in your chest when you've done everything right and still feel wrong inside. It stirs when the applause fades and you're alone with a life that no longer fits. Carl Jung understood that what we call anxiety, depression, or burnout may not be dysfunction. It may be the soul's revolt against an identity that was never truly yours. What if the pain you're experiencing isn't a breakdown, but a breakthrough? A sacred interruption meant to shatter the illusion you've mistaken for reality? The persona you've spent decades building, the mask you wear to survive, to impress, to belong, starts to crack, not because you're failing, but because the self underneath is finally waking up. And that self has been buried beneath years of social conditioning, silent compromise, and a life lived for everyone but you. When everything begins to feel pointless, when your job, your titles, even your relationships lose their color, it's easy to think you're falling apart. But this disintegration is not destruction, it's alchemy. The soul cannot thrive in exile. It will send signs, dreams you can't shake, restlessness that haunts you, questions that won't leave you alone. These aren't flaws. They're sacred signals. You aren't broken. You're being summoned. The spiritual awakening begins here, in the discomfort you try to numb, in the silence you're too afraid to sit in. We're conditioned to escape the symptoms, to fix what's wrong, to return to the normal life. But normal is what made you sick in the first place. The awakening isn't graceful. It can be disorienting, humiliating, even terrifying. But nothing real is lost, only illusions. What remains is truth, raw and radiant. In the first half of life, You climb a ladder placed against the wall of societal expectation, only to reach the top and realize it's leaning on the wrong wall. That hollow success, that performative happiness, that's not failure. That's feedback from your soul. Jung called this journey toward individuation, the slow and sacred reunion with the self. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about shedding everything you're not. And in a world obsessed with doing, this journey asks you to unlearn, to be still, to feel. The anxiety is not your enemy. It's a guidepost. The sadness is not a curse. It's a compass. What if the sadness you fear is the birthplace of your truth? In the age of distractions and dopamine, it takes spiritual intelligence to sit with the silence. But in that silence, something ancient awakens. A voice not of fear, but of clarity. Not of chaos, but of calling. This is the soul's language. It does not speak in logic. It speaks in longing. And when you finally listen, the world you built may tremble, but the world you are meant to live will begin to rise. The spiritual path doesn't make you someone new. It reveals the one you were always too sacred to be seen. That's not a breakdown. That's the beginning of becoming. If this inner disruption resonates with your journey, comment below, "I agree." If your path has led you to a different truth, share your thoughts with, "I don't think so." Your voice matters in this conversation. 5. The descent is the path to wholeness. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That truth shatters the illusion most people live under for decades. The belief that light is found by escaping the dark, that wisdom comes from avoiding pain, that success equals wholeness. In reality, the journey to true self begins not with elevation, but with descent into the parts of you you've disowned, the dreams you forgot, and the emotions you buried just to survive. For the first 40 years of life, many people live as performers in a script they didn't write, following roles assigned by family, culture, religion, and fear. They wear a mask of confidence while their inner world starves, but eventually, the mask cracks. A whisper emerges. "This isn't who I really am." And that whisper grows louder until it becomes unbearable to ignore. This descent is not a fall. It is a calling. It is the soul demanding to be remembered. It is spirituality stripped of its pleasantries and made raw. You begin to confront the shadow, not as your enemy, but as the key to your return. Spiritual awakening is not a moment of euphoria. It is the painful process of reintegration. You face your anger, your shame, your grief, your regrets, and instead of pushing them away, you begin to listen. You realize that spiritual wisdom doesn't come from books or teachers alone. It comes from radical honesty with yourself. Intelligence isn't only the mind's capacity to calculate or articulate. It is your ability to sit with what's uncomfortable, to hold paradox without panic, to grieve what never was, and to let go of who you thought you had to be. In this descent, you find your essence not by becoming better, but by becoming whole. You start to see that the version of you society celebrated was a mask meant to keep you safe, but not necessarily alive. And so, you begin to walk through your inner ruins, gathering the pieces you once called too broken, too messy, too much. Wholeness isn't perfection. It is the courage to embrace contradiction. It is the spiritual intelligence to love yourself while transforming. You learn that healing doesn't mean feeling good. It means feeling everything. And with each step into your inner world, the false self dies a little, and the soul breathes deeper. You are not losing yourself. You are losing the illusion. You are not spiraling down, you are spiraling into truth, into integration, into the quiet, radiant power that lives beyond performance, beyond approval, beyond fear. This is what Jung meant by making the darkness conscious, not to become someone else, but to finally meet who you've always been beneath the mask. 6. The call to individuation. Individuation is not about reinventing yourself. It's about peeling back every conditioned layer until only your truest essence remains. As Carl Jung taught, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. For the first 4 decades of your life, you may have mistaken survival for identity. You wore the right mask, said the right things, pursued the right goals, not because they reflected your soul, but because they kept you safe, accepted, applauded. But beneath every achievement and carefully curated self-image, something felt hollow. The applause faded quickly. The mirror looked unfamiliar. That's when the call to individuation begins, not as a loud command, but as a subtle ache in the soul whispering, "This isn't who I really am." This isn't about adding more to yourself. It's about subtracting the lies. The lie that your worth depends on productivity. The lie that vulnerability makes you weak. The lie that anger is dangerous, that sadness is shameful, that silence means nothing. True spiritual development asks you to sit with your inner rebel without silencing them, to comfort your wounded child without rushing their healing, to hold your rage without being consumed by it. You're not here to exile parts of yourself to appear more spiritual. You're here to integrate them, to welcome every piece of your being into the light. The capital S self emerges not when you perform for approval, but when you stop performing altogether. When you stop outsourcing your identity to what others want from you. When you stop confusing perfection with wholeness. Spirituality, when rooted in truth, doesn't look like constant peace or transcendence. It looks like returning to your own body with compassion, breathing through discomfort instead of bypassing it, choosing honesty over harmony, and still staying tender with yourself. You stop living for applause and start living from alignment. You stop searching for a fixed destination and start honoring your ever-evolving inner world. Individuation is remembering the self that was buried beneath survival strategies and ego masks. It's reclaiming the you that existed before the world told you who to be. You begin to realize that you're not broken. You're remembering. You're not behind. You're waking up. This is the work. Not to become someone else, but to come home to yourself. Spiritual development isn't found in chasing light. It's found in walking into your own shadows with courage and saying, "Even here, I am worthy." You don't fix yourself to become whole. You embrace yourself to remember that you already are. And that's the moment the shift happens. That's when you stop being driven by unconscious patterns and start choosing your life consciously. That's when the self finally rises, not as an idea, but as a presence, as the unshakable truth that you were never lost, just waiting to be found within your own awareness. 7. The silent revolution begins within. Once you awaken, the illusions that once governed your life status, image, perfection lose their grip, and something deeper begins to stir. You stop reaching for the applause of the crowd and start listening to the whisper of your soul. That whisper grows louder with each layer you peel back, not to reveal a better version of you, but the truest version of you. Carl Jung wasn't exaggerating when he said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart." Because only then do you understand. Spirituality isn't about rising above life. It's about sinking into it with your eyes wide open, your heart unarmored, and your essence unmasked. The world told you that success was control, image, achievement, but none of that can hold a candle to the quiet power of a person fully present, fully real, fully awake. This is the revolution that doesn't shout. It radiates. You don't need to fix others. You don't even need to explain. Your very presence becomes medicine, not because of anything you do, but because of who you are. People feel you before they hear you. They sense the vibration of someone who's no longer trying to fit in, but instead has remembered how to belong to themselves. The spiritual awakening doesn't make you shinier. It makes you rawer, quieter, braver. It strips away your need to impress, your compulsion to chase, your addiction to becoming. You start to see that everything you wanted was a reflection of something you forgot you already carried. You stop running after light and start becoming the light. But this isn't a path for the faint of heart. It will ask you to grieve the version of yourself that played small to be accepted. It will demand you surrender roles that brought you praise but cost you your peace. And slowly, beautifully, it will teach you to live from your essence instead of your ego. You become the mirror that doesn't flatter but reveals. You are no longer addicted to being understood because you have finally understood yourself. In this space, you begin to realize that the most profound truths don't need validation. Stillness becomes your teacher. Energy becomes your language. Authenticity becomes your currency. You no longer rush to fill silences or decorate your pain. You allow everything to breathe. The body, the mind, the spirit all begin to align, not because you pushed harder, but because you let go. And in letting go, you return to a self that doesn't need approval to feel enough, to a soul that remembers what it means to be whole. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the sacred unfolding of who you were beneath the conditioning. And the more you shed what isn't you, the more magnetic you become, not in a loud way, but in a way that calls people home to themselves simply by being near you. The spiritual path doesn't promise ease, but it does promise truth. And truth, once remembered, changes everything. 8. This is the real journey. From persona to presence. You are not behind, and you are not broken. Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom reveals that the first 40 years of your life were not a mistake. They were a sacred rehearsal, a necessary unfolding of your ego, your identity, your persona. During this time, you were taught who to be, how to behave, what to want, and who to please. You climbed ladders that were never yours, wore masks to gain love, chased success to feel worthy, and absorbed beliefs that silenced your intuition. But this was not a failure. It was formation. Now, the descent begins not into despair, but into depth. This is where real intelligence awakens, not through accumulating knowledge, but through unlearning everything that is not aligned with your soul. You start to feel the subtle cracking of the mask, the dissonance between the life you built and the presence you crave. And in that tension, something ancient stirs, The voice of your soul, once faint, now speaks with clarity. This is not who I truly am. From this moment on, you are no longer searching for meaning. Your existence becomes the meaning. Your choices reflect inner truth, not external pressure. You no longer ask, "What should I do to be accepted?" but "What feels honest to my essence?" The life that once felt like a performance begins to dissolve, and in its place, a quiet presence rises steady, sovereign, whole. This is the process of individuation. You don't become someone new. You return to the one you abandoned. You embrace your shadow, not as a threat, but as a teacher. Every wound becomes a doorway. Every fear, an invitation. Every unmet longing, a compass pointing you home. Spiritual awakening is not loud. It's not fireworks or fanfare. It's slow, remembering a sacred undoing. You begin to realize that true power has nothing to prove. It just is. You stop chasing love and instead become a field in which love naturally rests. You stop performing success and instead become a vessel of purpose. You stop fearing solitude and instead walk with your soul like an old friend. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Now you begin to see how much of your life was lived asleep, repeating ancestral patterns, unconscious roles, borrowed dreams. But the spell breaks. The mirror clears. You become the observer of your own narrative, not its prisoner. In this second half of life, you are no longer proving your worth. You are embodying it. Your presence becomes your protest. Your peace becomes your power. Your truth becomes your compass. And this, finally, is the beginning of everything real. And so, if life has felt like a performance, if you've ever sensed that you've been living someone else's story, know this: it's never too late to begin again. This time, with truth as your compass. The first 40 years may have been about fitting in, but the rest can be about waking up. If this message stirred something deep within you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with someone who's also ready to climb the right mountain. Leave a like, subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and tap the notification bell so you never miss a moment of awakening. Your journey toward true selfhood is just beginning, and we'll be here to walk it with you.